Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wild Woman. It's a podcast I started, I've mentioned before. I started it really as a result of a journey that I have been on through breast cancer in 2016. And it sparked something awake in me that has refused to go back to sleep. And I know it's sort of my true soul spirit calling, and it has led me on a journey I'm still on and will be on till the day I die. And as part of that, it's challenging, it's rewarding, it's enriching. I wouldn't change one moment of it, but it has caused me, or I suppose, to start a podcast where I can have conversations with other women who are on this journey, have been on this journey, many further along than me, many in very different ways of life and living. And the reason I want to do that is to learn from these other women and also to share with you their stories so that if you too are feeling this soul calling rising up in you, and I believe many of us are, because we're at a very pivotal time on the planet. Everything is changing, it's shifting. So if this resonates with you and you feel it, I hope that it will inspire and enable you to go on that your own journey of recovering, reclaiming, and living your soul purpose. And no better woman to be talking to today on this topic. I'm so delighted to have the privilege to talk to internationally renowned numerologist, soul seeker, I see from her, a spiritual healer, a woman who's been doing this work for so many years. So I'm so delighted, Gráinne, that you're here to share your story and your wisdom with the audience. So thank you. And I'd love just if you'd start by just sharing a little bit about yourself, your past, what's got you on this path, and what experiences have shaped you to get you on this path.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Celine. It's great to be here. It's great to finally meet you, even if it is virtual. And it's great to be able to have the opportunity and the platform, I guess, to share my story. Well, it's certainly, I guess before I came in and I was making my decisions on what I was going to experience in this lifetime, I sometimes still even question it now. My God, what a road I've taken, and what a lots of twists and turns, shall we say. So I guess in terms of the work I do, yes, I am an international numerologist, and I'm a soul seer, as you wisely said. And I have been helping people to uncover and discover their true soul purpose for many years now, 27 years approximately. And but all my life really. But firstly, I had to begin with myself, I guess. So I was always very intuitive as a child. I was a very high sensitive, probably a serious child, but the eldest of two children, and born into a normal family, and as normal as can be in Dublin, in Terranure in Dublin. And very sensitive. I could hear things. I remember seeing, I could see fairies, and I could see people, especially people who had passed. At the time, different members of my family I could see them who had passed into spirit, but I never told anyone. And I always had a very strong spirit guide who was with me from as young as I can remember till about the age of 7 and 8. That's when I kind of shut down. But up to then, I had this beautiful, huge, tall man. He had beautiful ivory color skin, and he wore purple robes. And he used to just stand in the corner. And I used to call him Mr. Sandyman. And I just
Support.
yeah, Mr. Sandyman. I didn't know who he was, but I never told anyone, even my own sister, who I'm very close to. Irish twins, were born within literally the same year. But, I just never told until, I suppose, as I say, I came out of the psychic closet, the spiritual closet in my early 30s. That's when it all began to open up again. So that was the beginning.
Sorry, yeah.
You go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, yeah, just when you say that there, what was the catalyst, would you say, when you said you come out of the spiritual
Yeah.
closet in your 30s?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
There's
I've
always
had
one.
yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, I always had, I was kind of lucky in my life, really. I mean, I've had lots of different experiences, but certainly, teenage years was the usual stuff. And then I went off gallivanting in my early 20s to Canada. And I lived in Canada with my boyfriend, then my husband, at the time. And we had a wonderful life there. And then when I came back to Ireland in my late 20s, around the time of my Saturn return, 29, I had my first child. And that really was the beginning of the whole new sort of maturity. But also, I still hadn't woken up yet. But it was, really the love I felt for my daughter. I'd never experienced anything like this, that overwhelming feeling. I'm very blessed. But then it took for me, and then I had another daughter within 2 years, Alva. And then it was the third pregnancy I had. I lost a baby. I lost a little boy. It was late enough, miscarriage. And that was the catalyst, that loss. I'd never experienced much loss up to that point. And that catapulted me onto questioning, why am I here? Who am I? And in the same week that I lost Cathal, my father was diagnosed with terminal cancer. So the same week. So I remember putting my grief in a box up somewhere for my baby. And I focused all my energy from that point on for my father, who died about 6 months later. So that was all a bit of a blur, 2 young children and everything. And I was in the corporate world at that point. I wasn't anything to do with spirituality or,
Where were you working, or what type of work
I
were you
worked
doing?
in marketing actually, like probably
Okay.
like yourself. Yeah, I worked in corporate world in Canada. I worked in oil companies and different things, and then I worked here for big American companies
Mm,
in Ireland. That is.
yes.
So, but it didn't. I mean, look, it didn't give me any joy or satisfaction. It was a ways to me, a means to an end, so to speak. But I hadn't really looked at anything too deeply. So it took for me to be about 33 actually. And that's a very profound number in numerology. It's one of the master numbers, the number of Christ consciousness and higher awareness. So 33 is when it all kicked off. Everything opened up. And so it began.
Okay. So talk about that a little when you say that.
Mm,
You'd gone through, as you said, this grief. You lost your young baby and then your father. So just
mm.
even in terms of how did that then sort of turn into this?
I kind of
Um,
went on a bit of a trajectory of sort of, I probably went a bit wild. I just wanted to run away. I just could not cope.
oh, I
Um,
identify.
yeah,
For someone who
I
did the same, it's quite terrifying, isn't it, when you're faced with, yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
And I feel the first person who's a pivotal part of my story is a wonderful lady who I'd love to meet again if she ever listens to this. Her name was Marie. She was a neighbor of mine in Dublin where I lived in my family home. And she was a Reiki master. And I had never heard of Reiki. I had no idea. And she knew I was in absolute bits. I was just about functioning and in a really bad way. And I remember going to her, and I remember she talked about chakras. And when I look at it now, at the time, I had no idea, no concept. So she did a session on me, and for me, Reiki healing opened me up. It's I started seeing again, I started hearing again, and it took a while to sort of adjust my frequency because I'm still human. Obviously, we all are, but for me, it was remembering the child again inside of me, thinking, oh my God, this is what we used to do when we were little. So,
mm,
and I kind of kept it all in. I mean, I was married and to a very nice man, genuinely, and he still is a lovely man. He's married to someone else now, but that's okay. But a lovely man. And it was very difficult. I can look back now for him because I completely changed. I went on a different trajectory. I changed everything about myself physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. So that's like suddenly living with a stranger, even though I was still Gráinne. So that was tricky. And of course, I
mm,
was trying to readjust, and I was rearing two little ones at the time. And, trying to find myself within all of this context. And then I was minding, my mother was elderly, so I was caring for her too. So but then I started exploring, healing. And I came across a wonderful lady. I don't know if you knew her, Margaret Naylon. She was a
heard the name, heard the name.
numerologist.
Mm,
She used to be on Today FM, actually. which I'm
Okay.
on sometimes as well now. But she was a great pal. I met her, and I trained in numerology with Margaret.
Okay. So
That
that was sort of the
opened,
start, was it? Well,
that was the
you know,
start,
of the work that you're doing.
yeah, of the
And
numerology piece. Yeah.
and isn't it interesting, just as you started describing there, I've often felt that myself, you know, when we hear the word soul purpose, it can be a little bit, oh my God, my soul purpose, I have to find it. And it's sort of in every day, isn't it? It's in the everyday moments. And what I found is the right people, like what you described there, the right people show up. So it's not we have this big job on our own to do. It's like what you described, Margaret Nail and the neighbor. So, you know, you were being guided. Would you
Mm.
say that
Mm.
very
Oh,
clearly into this path?
absolutely.
Once you
Yes,
put your hands
absolutely.
up, isn't it, and say, I can't do this on my own, you know,
Yeah.
okay, take over.
Oh, yeah. And in my work, I guess as a numerologist, I'm always looking at numbers because your numbers have a significance, your date of birth, your name from birth. I'm sure I'll talk about that later.
Mm,
But
mm,
I know I'm a three life path in my
okay.
world, and three is all about expression, communication, creativity, networking. It's called the sunshine number, and I love to talk. You'd never guess, and but I love to listen as well. But I suppose I didn't realize, at that point, I was so busy in my, I was a young parent, raising two little ones at the time. Then I went on to have Vanessa, the princessa, who's now 22. And she completely catapulted me onto my path because when I got pregnant with Vanessa, I was very anxious and very nervous and about losing her, so
Mm,
that full 9 months was torturous. So, but she is, oh my God, she's a sweetheart, and she's a primary school teacher herself. But she catapulted me onto the path even more because with her coming in, it brought me to another state of awareness. And I prayed and I prayed that I wasn't going to lose her, because it had been so hard losing the last child. Now I waited about 3 years, there's a good gap. So she is, yeah, she's the princess, as we call her.
wow, isn't that just,
She'll kill me now for saying this, but
oh, no, that's,
they're all amazing, the three girls, but
yeah.
they're really interesting women. But Vanessa was the one who really got me on the path of discovery.
Wow. And isn't it interesting when you say that you're the number three and then the three girls? Because I've heard you, you know, when you talk about your three girls as well, there's something in that, isn't there?
Yeah.
Does that sort of come into, we'll talk a little bit because as well, numerology is, I wouldn't say it's quite new to me. It probably is. I'm very interested in it. I've always sort of dipped in and out. Astrology then sort of took my interest recently, and it actually came about through a woman who interviewed me about my first book is an astrologer and a hypnotherapist. And now I'm training with her. So it's interesting how our paths weave, isn't it? I would never, she's in the UK, would never have found her. So I would say I'm a beginner. I'm a very enthusiastic beginner in astrology and learning about numerology. So just take us back. You said you started training, is it with Margaret Nailon? She is a numerologist, I assume.
Yeah, she's
Yeah,
passed now. She died about 7 years ago, around the same
okay.
time as my mother. And I was very fond of Margaret. And Margaret had a very unusual way of teaching. It was very experiential. You were thrown in, basically. And she just, it was very simplified. And I mean that with respect to Margaret. She was gifted. So she really taught us the basics, and then the rest we took from that. And then I just studied more. I just research all the time. But for me now, I see numbers as archetypes. I just connect with them so well. Um, I wasn't a big fan of maths in school. In fact, I hated math. I was more of the creative side. But for now, I love working with numbers because it really is our calling card. I'm very interested in astrology too. I'm
Mm.
certainly not an astrologer, but I do have an interest, and I feel they very much dovetail together
Mm.
because
Yes.
everything is energy. We were talking about this
Yeah.
before we came live.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything is energy and vibration. So numbers are vibration, just like color, sound, and obviously the vibrational universe that we live in. So it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like I studied maths in college, and I don't know why still sometimes to this day, but I do in another way. It's funny, like you said, it's under to me, I'm realizing I sort of nearly knew when I was studying it, this is going to be useful to you later in life. And not in the sense I don't remember really anything I learned other than there's a language, there's something more to this, and it's like it's been activated again in me. I think that's what, isn't it? The frequency, as your frequency shifts, as we said, we're all energy. Things come online is the only way I find I can describe it. And I start going, oh, there's a knowing. It's a very different way of relating to life, isn't it? How that's what I find. It's not a mental, intellectual type of way of relating, which is how I found it that very difficult in the world. I didn't realize I found it quite a strain. I could do it, but I found a strain. And then when you come back more into your body and the energy of it, it's a much easier way, isn't it? Or how would you describe that? It's the only way I can find. And mathematics and numbers and the sort of geometry, isn't it, of life start to comes
Yeah.
alive in you or something. Because we
Yes,
are that.
we
Excuse
are
me.
that. And, I try to keep things very simple because that's the way I was trained,
Mm,
and
mm.
yes, sacred geometry is, of course, is a part of it. But like Pythagoras, the Pythagorean system is what I was trained in initially. And Pythagoras he was some character, like he was you know uh way beyond his time. I think he was kind of like a time traveler or something like that. But
Mm.
he very much resonates with the energy of Merlin, that kind of vibe, the magician, the alchemist. And
I love that. I love that. I love even when I hear that. It just, yeah, brilliant.
yeah, I
Sounds
always
fun
had this.
too.
Yeah, yeah, I love Merlin. I love all that energy. But I guess with in terms of Pythagoras, like he saw the correlation between sound, music, also numbers. And it was a tradition that was passed down, it wasn't written, it was all just passed down orally to each person, and then it was passed through the generations. So it's always been kind of a secret code in a sense, but there's nothing really secret, it's energy. So I try not to make it too, I know it can be utilized for other means that may not be positive. But for the work I do, my God, it's always to encourage people to remember what their soul purpose is, what they signed up for, if you will. So that's
Isn't
what I
that
do.
just the most, oh my God, magical work you could be doing when you
Oh, I
say
love
that? It's just, and can you just talk a little bit just more about the numerology then and the numbers and how they would relate to someone's soul purpose or soul calling or how I know I think I'm a number one. I think from adding up do you add up your day and your year
year.
and the
Yeah, no, I
month?
never did your numbers, so I
Yeah,
I
no,
don't
no, no.
know.
It's all right. No, it's always been something I've just dipped in and out a little of. But is that where you start with someone, and is that
So
usually why someone comes to you?
yeah, yeah, people come for a variety of reasons. Usually the words are, I'm at a crossroads, and I go, yummy.
Mm.
So now they're at the time when they're starting to remember in some level. And sometimes it can be easy as well and effortless, like we don't have to go through trauma. Well, a lot of time we do, but to awaken. But sometimes it can be very easy, you're in the right place at the right time. I suppose the purpose of what I do is I look at one's date of birth and their name from birth, what's on the birth certificate. And I would meet people. I had a lady the other day who's known as Tina, but her real name is Caroline. And there was no explanation as to why. It just,
God.
she just was just called Tina, and I love when I see that because some people, like my own father, was christened Pierce and he hated the name. No offense to anyone called Pierce listening, but he changed his name to Charlie. Now that's a long time
God.
ago. But he was a cheeky Charlie. He definitely wasn't a Pierce. So some are, I believe, on a soul level, we've chosen the name in which we're known as, because that's the vibration that
Okay,
we
so
come
that would
from.
be the more important name, the name that you end up being
Oh
using.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or the name on the birth cert is what you are, that is your soul's contract. Then the date of birth is very significant because I really believe we choose, everything is predestined.
So do I.
Our parents, socioeconomic, color of our skin, where we live, everything. And I really do believe we have free will. And that's why souls like to come onto the earth, on this planet, because we have free will. We can decide, no, I'm not going to do it. Okay, you're not
Mm.
doing it. Whereas in other places, I believe we may have to, follow through. But it tends to come around anyway, doesn't it? We tend to finally get to our place. It might take a little bit longer. So, your name from birth, the name you're known as and that you use, and your middle name is significant as well. Some people don't use it at all, but when I'm doing a chart, I have to use the middle name if they have one. And then the surname is of curiosity because that's the family and the lineage into which you were born. Now, obviously, we've another line as well, or whatever, our mother's line. Most people take their father's name. Now, I always say to people as well who take on a married name to be cautious about that, because you are taking on the unfinished spiritual business of the family into which you're born, getting married into.
Okay. Never thought of that, even though I never took my married name.
Yeah, a lot of people. Yeah, exactly. I did, I think, for a year, and I changed it back. It just didn't feel right. So,
and could that be part of maybe their path is to do that they have some work to maybe contribute to that line, I suppose, or if we choose everything, I suppose. Yeah.
Choose everything, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's another thing to take on.
I know.
But I know traditionally women always change their names.
Yeah.
But I suppose, it's something to consider.
Yeah.
I know people are baffled when they hear that, but you may want to take on the name, and that's beautiful. Maybe you want to not look at the family dynamics into which you were born. And it doesn't mean it won't come up to be healed, but it may not be the predominant one, as you say. It could be more to do the work for the family into which you're marrying. So that's curious. So, and then our date of birth is our calling card, really. So whether you've been brought in naturally or forceps or C-section, makes absolutely diddly squat. That's when you're coming in. When the light hits the pituitary gland and you're in, you're in.
Okay, yeah.
So,
and is the time and the location, like with astrology, is that important too for when you're doing a
not
chart?
for us, no. Not for numerology, no.
Okay. So it's the numbers around the date of your birth, and then your name. Is your name also translated into numbers? Is that?
Oh yeah, it's very
Yes.
important.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very important. And because every letter has a number assigned to it. And so when I add the vowels of the name, it tells me what the soul purpose is. When I add
Yes.
the consonants, it's the personality. And when you add them both together, it's the destiny.
Wow. Gosh, I hadn't heard that before. That's fascinating.
Mm.
Wow. And is that linked to gematria? I've just heard about gematria recently. Is that another version of numerology?
No,
You ever
I
heard of
don't
that?
know about that. No.
It's I won't go. That's a whole side subject, but it's where the alphabet A to Z. So A, just when you say that with the letters, A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, and it's sort of used to decode, I think, or something. I'm not sure, but it's another language, I suppose. It's a version of a type of numerology, I think.
Never heard of that.
Okay.
But I would imagine it's, could be another offshoot. I've
Yes.
always had an interest in codes. I mean, absolutely hated maths in school, but I had an ability, which I still don't understand, to be able to do coding.
Wow. Coding as in computer coding
Yeah.
type of.
Yeah.
And how did
Yeah.
you even find that out?
Well, I was in college and I was doing something sort of computer science, and I remember I was able to code, and I couldn't figure out. I mean, that was definitely a past life because it's just
Wow.
not my gig. Yes, of course, I love numerology, but maths, oh, I hated maths. So it's so curious that because I never would have dreamed I could do something like that. Now, I didn't go through with that, of course, but I
Yeah.
was able to do it. It was the weirdest thing. Yeah.
So that is obviously, would you say, part of the numerology, sort of that the fact that you've been sort of drawn to it? Is there any connection there?
I'd say it
Or
could be a past life,
okay.
you know, because it was, even though you might go, why computers? But there was
Yeah.
something, I was able to do it. I could not understand why.
Yes.
I'm a Gemini moon, so I'd have kind of a fast brain that works fast,
Mm, mm.
but sometimes I find my mouth can't keep up with the brain because it's going too fast. So
Yeah. And is the like when you say coding, that sort of something I don't even know, it's not computer coding, but does that I get something, is all of the universe nearly code? Everything is nearly numbers, isn't it? Sound and numbers and everything is vibration.
yeah.
So a number, you're saying a number holds a vibration. Is that?
Yes, it
Yeah.
does. So
So
once your
yeah,
house that
sorry,
you live in, the number of your house, and the
3.
last 4 digits of your phone number, is yours a 3?
And the last 2 digits of my phone number are 33 of
Oh, nice. Oh,
my
threes are,
mobile number. And the
yeah.
house I'm in is a 3. So
Oh,
that's
how,
interesting. Just funny when
yeah.
you say
So,
that. Yeah.
yeah. Well, so the number of your house is hugely important because, again, it's the energy you're going to be living in, the environment, and everything has a meaning. And so you look at them individually. Like in my case, I live in a number 18. So I look both numbers and then add it together to a 9.
Yes.
Um, but equally, your telephone number, the last 4 digits are significant to you. So they're all individual to each and every one of us for some reason. I don't
Yes.
know how this works, but so
Yeah.
that's another thing to look at. So you can
So
add the 4 final digits and you'll get a number which means something.
okay. Mine would be 6. Anyways, we that's for a
Yeah.
separate consultation. I'm using up the time here now getting so when you then this is so interesting. So when you if someone comes to you and says they're at a crossroads in their life, or obviously something as you said has brought them there and they're feeling yeah, I'm either stuck or I want to change. You develop a chart, is it, for them based on all of these things that you're talking about?
I
Um,
create a chart, yeah, and we
okay.
talk on Zoom for an hour and a bit, and then
A
I
little
send the
pause.
recording. Oh,
It's
are
breaking
we?
up a little there, Gráinne, I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, I think I'm
Just
okay
did
on
you
my
notice
end.
that we
I
went a little
did
out of, I don't
a
know if
little.
it's my or your, but we're back. Okay, are we?
We're back.
Good. Okay. Sorry. So just yeah, I was saying about how what you use then to pull together a chart for somebody is all of those. If you just want to maybe
Yeah.
talk a little
So
about that.
sure. So I create a chart and I just work with that, and I use a lot of intuition as well. I work with my own team of guides who help me to tune into the person I'm talking to. So I use a lot of intuition as well. Yes, the numbers
Yes.
are my triggers. They trigger me to understand. And I can do
Yes.
past lives as well with numbers,
Okay.
career
Okay.
choices. But really, as you said earlier, Celine, it is so true. Our soul purpose doesn't have to be anything fancy or over the top. For a lot of people, it can just be to learn to be loved. It depends. For
Yeah.
me, as a 3 life path, it's to bring joy and find joy in my life. If you're a 1 life path, I'm not sure if you are, but if you are, it's about to be your own person, to be your own sovereign being,
Yes.
and to be a
Yeah.
leader.
Yeah.
So it just depends. But again, that's just very basic, but there's a whole
Yeah.
combination. It's like a
Yeah.
jigsaw that I put together as I'm speaking to someone.
Beautiful. So you're bringing. So when you said you went through that, I suppose if you want to call it that, yeah, awakening or your own grief, and I know as you said, it doesn't have to be that. Like I sort of feel that too, but unfortunately, well, I always say to people, I'm obviously a slow learner because I got so many so many things happening, and that because I suppose if we're going along and everything is okay, and maybe that is our path. Because what I'm curious, sorry, so going back, so all of those gifts started to come back. It sounds like that had to happen for all of your gifts to come online, and it's going to be different for everyone depending on what your role is here. Or like as you said, it could be just to be able to be loved or receive love, and that takes a lot of the pressure, I think, because I think we hear so much of this language of getting out there and achieving our soul purpose and doing. And for me it nearly seems to have been the opposite, because I was always out doing, but it was sort of driven from a sort of a head place. It wasn't driven from my heart and my soul and my and that's the difference. I feel it doesn't matter what you're doing because you'll know if it's right because it feels right.
Yeah.
So for you it sounds like all of that, it was the right time and all of those things come on, like your intuition, everything started to come alive in you because the environment was right, or the
Yeah. And I
or
mean, there
it's
was a
not.
huge fallout. Like
Mm,
there was a huge fallout. Like I could say it was all
yeah,
roses.
yeah, I
It
know it
certainly
never is.
wasn't.
Yeah,
It was very painful.
yeah,
But I knew I had to do this. I had no choice. I had signed up for it.
So
And,
you were very
I had a
clear at
lot of,
that time. Sorry, you were very clear. That just felt very clear to you, because I think often we doubt it. I doubted it. So something in you
yeah,
knew this is the way it has to.
yes, it was like this huge, overwhelming sense of you have a purpose now to help many people to awaken. And it was initially, it was like the doors just opened. I was painting, I remember at the time as well. And people would come and buy my art. It was just effortless. Now I had three little children at the time. And then people would come and then they'd ask me and I'd do readings for them. And it just kind of developed and people would pass on my name. So this all just started. And then I got an opportunity to go on TV, and I do a lot of radio myself anyway, but TV particularly, that really sort of threw me onto a catapulted me into, I suppose, being out there, if you will, and it wasn't certainly something I had thought would happen. So I was on, whatever is it still called TV3? I don't know, Virgin Media,
Or
whatever, for
or
3 years.
yeah. Okay. So that's so
Yeah,
did some okay, that's so
yeah,
how did you were just you were saying, so this sort of was happening and you were doing art, and I know music is a big part of your life as well, isn't it? So did all of these start to happen around the same time?
yeah.
Did you say you
Everything
always,
it
yeah,
was like it's like an
a light
avalanche.
bulb? Yeah.
Oh Jesus, no, it was so powerful, and yet all these things were happening and awakening, and I was on my path. I felt the joy again. But it obviously had a ripple effect because, my marriage unfortunately ended, which was really awful. It was terrible. And, I'm still coming to terms with that, even though we're well divorced. But it's more about the fallout. But
Yes.
I still had this drive, Celine. I still had to keep doing, and I will do this work to the day I take my last breath. Even if I'm just in the supermarket, I'll, chatting to someone. I would never tune into them, but I just talk, and hold space. So yeah, there was a massive fallout, but with that, there was also great joy. I mean, my soul is, fulfilled. Um,
Mm,
but the human part sometimes has to try and keep up, but
yes.
that's the real me now. You
Yeah.
know, I don't pretend to have it all sussed. I don't, but I certainly give it a good shot.
And you're enjoying, isn't that the thing, the joy, um, that we find, because I don't think what I think is very helpful, maybe, well, to me, to anyone listening, is that, as you said, the fallout, the pain that, sometimes we do have to go through. If you're not finding the joy, it's sort of, you wouldn't keep going, because I know I was in a lot of suffering before I ever started to, let's say, awaken to who I am, or the joy, or the true me. Um, and I couldn't continue with that. I mean, I have no qualms. I've said it to people, because I think when you share honestly, it hopefully will help someone else who's going through the same human journey. But I had many days I wished I didn't wake up years ago, because the pain was so horrific and I didn't know what to do. I really didn't know what to do. And the world, sometimes it's no one's fault, isn't set up. Everybody's dealing with their own pain. And I think it could be hard to face someone else's pain if you haven't faced your own, to be able to hold it. So the fact that you talk about finding the joy, I find that as well, that to anyone, if you start to honor and listen to that part of yourself, it's sort of, doesn't it? It nearly starts to balance out and help you deal with the pain, because you still have to do that, don't you? Um, you can't
Yeah.
bury it. That's a big part. Can you talk about that as well, even for yourself, and how maybe you support others to do it, and how you've done it in your own life? Because I think that's the biggest obstacle often to realizing your purpose, is you have to process what's kept. And I know I've seen it on your website, and I learned it. I studied craniosacral therapy for a while, and we used to talk about the issues being in the tissues. And I know I've seen that you've said it, and I love that, because I think it is the truth. So how do you? I think that's a key part, isn't it, to stepping into?
Oh yeah. I,
Mm,
I I think the biggest thing for me, as I get a little bit older now, and hopefully like the crone. And I quite like that. I can get
so do
away with
I. I
things.
love that. I love that. Yeah, I
A
love
wild
even
woman,
that
I
name.
can get away with
Love
things
it.
now. But I've always been like that anyway. But I for me, well, there's a number of things. I think firstly, reaching out and getting support, and allowing your vulnerability. It doesn't mean we have to be weeping willows. Now, it's okay to cry. I cry for Ireland, but it's about expression. And also, I love laughter, and I have, a very close friend, particularly Emma, who, when I'm with her, I just laugh. I mean, she just brings my energy up, and I her, hopefully. But when you're with somebody that just makes you feel good, and we all need those friends, but equally we need the friends as well who can, be there to support us and sit in silence. So for me, even though I'm very outgoing and I love being out and about and typical three, I need a lot of time to retreat inwards and go very quiet and still. So that's very important for me. And of course, I go for Reiki with my wonderful Reiki master, Alva Prone, and she's unbelievable. She's my Reiki master. So I'm a Reiki master myself. And I've done IET and Sakim and Rahani and all the different things. But I do them for myself. And then, I haven't used them for other people for a while, but I still have that, for me. So,
Yes.
but I think to be true to yourself, yes, we all have off days, we have great days, we have middle days, but it's okay. It's okay. It's just part of getting to the next step.
Yeah.
I hope that answers it.
No, it does. It's also it does. I think it's so important, as you said. But it's been a big lesson to me in the last number of years is who you surround yourself with, as well as I had no idea about this. I just, because I know it's been a big part, it still is a big part of my journey, is boundaries and my sense of self and finding that sovereignty. I have a strong sense that's a big part of my path in this life, going from sort of very codependent. I'm a Piscean as well, so I've sort of no boundaries and I have a lot of planets in Aries. I'm off on another conversation. So the sort of this beginning and the end, and this, so it's sort of, I didn't come in with that sense of self. I came in, it's sort of in an ocean, and I nearly feel like my path is to find myself so I can go back into the ocean. So it's something like that. It's come to me through the astrology, and so I would have had very poor boundaries. I'd no sense of, if somebody wanted something off me, I just felt that's what I'm supposed to do. Whatever anybody wants, just take it. So just as you describe, and I think many of us are brought up, particularly in Ireland, to believe, a good person is, you put yourself last, and it's not that we can't, as well. I think we hear it all the time, but I didn't know how to put this into practice. I didn't know how to honor myself or take the time I needed, or say, no, I can't go there. So it's it just sounds, yeah, from what you're saying, that's a big part of the, I'm gone off now on that whole thing of boundaries, but I suppose, yeah, the people we surround ourselves with. So you would say
Yeah,
that's a key, that is, because that's part of the
I
frequency,
agree.
isn't it?
I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah,
And I suppose, I think love, I mean, I know it's really cliche, but really loving yourself,
yeah,
you know, it's really simple. A lot of the time, and I have to be reminded of this as well, but, you know, we forget that, start with even liking yourself, and really looking for the things that are so good about you, or, and it's not in an egoic way, just acknowledging, you did well there now today. That was lovely that what you made, just being kind to yourself as we would
mm,
to someone else we loved,
yeah,
and love. So that's really important. And
oh,
it's all energy. So what you're putting out will come straight back.
yeah. It does, isn't it? It all starts. Can we just for a few moments as well talk a bit about? I'd like to talk about just more broadly as well what you feel is happening on the planet, because I think we're all feeling, as well as what's happening. I sort of feel, isn't it? I know we hear these things, as within, so without, but it all starts inside. So when you talk about awakening, and I know a lot of people, because it's language that we're hearing, and you know everybody sees that differently. How would you describe that for a person, you said, sometimes who comes to you in your own awakening? How would you describe that to someone listening who's like, what do you mean awakening?
Yeah. gosh, how long have we got? Here for 2 days.
It's a process that goes on and on and on. An
Yeah,
infinite unfolding, actually.
yeah,
Whatever that is. Yeah.
yeah, and that's why I suppose, like yourself, which is wonderful, the work you're doing. I started my own podcast 3 years ago, back in the middle of the experiences we had, and for me, it was a way of just talking things out for myself, really, and obviously, like yourself, it's developed legs. But I suppose that from a numerology perspective, 2023 is a 7 energy, because you just add all the digits together, and 7, the year 7 that we're in, is all about healing the past. All of
Okay.
us, this is collective now. So all of us on the earth at the moment, I think there's about 6 billion of us or thereabouts. We're all coming and going, but we're all here to work through our own past, but also the collective past. And 7 is a mystical number. It's associated there. He is again, Merlin, our friend, Merlin, and magic, and not so much magic, but alchemy, creating the world that we want. So we do have an opportunity, and I really believe. I mean, I love history, and if you just look at historically, the civilizations fall and rise again, and we're part of a collective. I firmly believe collective time, very like Atlantis. I think we're repeating it, and how we learned the lessons. Individually, we have a part to play in the collective pot, and that's really important to remember that. Like, whilst we might blame our governments and medical systems and blah 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 politicians, really we have to take our own responsibility to respond to what is actually on the earth right now. So collectively, yeah, it's a curious time, and like each month then has a significance. So currently we're in September. So what we do is in numerology, we add the number 9, which is September, to the year, which is 7, and we get the number 16. So and actually that's a karmic number in numerology. So for the month of September, we're in an energy of a 16/7, which is the same as the year. So I know I'm probably talking in a
No,
different
no, no,
language.
no. This is...
I hope it's okay. So
Yeah.
this is a really important month, because it's been a very interesting month, hasn't it, Celine? It's been
Oh my God. Yes.
I'm always overwhelmed at the end of a month. Like, I
Yeah.
can't believe this is nearly the end of September again.
I know. And it's
So
going so fast, isn't it? Isn't that another part of it? It just
really,
feels like there's hardly time to take a breath before something else. But it's like it's happening, like you said, it's out there collectively, but it's also, what I'm finding is, like you said, I can be out there pointing the finger or giving out, and that's fine too. We all do that, but usually it's because it's what's being triggered inside of me that I need to shift internally before I go out pointing the finger, because when I do that too much, it just leaves me in a state of stress and out of balance. And I think that's important, isn't it, for us to remember that you're really out of your power when you're out there. Whatever, there's nothing wrong with being out doing what you feel called to do, but if it's not feeling sort of, isn't
yeah,
it, aligned with where you're at?
yeah, we definitely need to take really look at how far we've come individually, and then take full accountability and responsibility for our own lives. I think that's the key. And particularly this month, it's 16, which is all about the fall of the ego.
Okay. Fall of
So
the egos this month. Yeah.
yeah, and it's been a karmic month where you can see there's some, major players in the world
Mm-hmm.
stage it's about justice.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very curious. So I think October is going to be an interesting month, Celine.
Yes. Can you give us any
Oh,
tips for
oh. Take you to
what's
bed.
ahead?
No, no. I always say that, take thee to the bed. But October will be very interesting. It's back to eclipse season, which always brings up the shadow. 10/10 will be an interesting one. Remember
Oh
that
yeah.
date. And October, even though it's a 10th month, it'll actually be an 8 vibration in numerology, because the 10 and the 7 come to an 8 for the month of October. So the energy will vibrate as an 8, and which means October, I'd say there'd be quite a lot of volatility on the financial markets.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Because
So
8 is always to do with money, abundance, power. ambition, drive. So we might see some maybe people out there who have been dominant in maybe, how do I put it, dominant in selling a story to the collective which may not actually be true. Their truth will be prevailing. So there may be a lot of people been exposed, shall we say.
Yes, that's good.
Organizations, but
Yeah.
particularly financial markets. I have
Okay.
no idea of that. That's not
Yes.
my game. But just, so there could be more new currencies.
Okay.
There could be changes within that as well.
Okay. Okay. So you're well ahead. Do you
I'm
find
already here.
I
I'm
mean, it's
always looking at what's
just,
ahead.
oh
Yeah.
my God. It's and I was going to ask something there came out of what you were saying about, yeah, isn't is so would you, when you talk about truth there and the death of the ego this month, it seems to me the more that we're on, we talk about awakening. So there's awakening in the sense of what's happening on the planet, let's say the evolution, and you said like going back to Atlantean times. And then there's sort of the awakening of someone like me or a client who comes to you and goes, I'm at a crossroads and I don't know what to do. Do you feel there's more? My sense is that there are more people going through this because of the time we're at on the planet. Are you noticing this in the people who are coming to you and the numbers and the type of people coming to you?
Absolutely. I mean, 2020, what happened. I mean, in numerology terms, I remember when I was training years ago, saying, I wonder what will happen in 2020. Like back in the 90s, I was doing that. And I was thinking, God, that's utopia. 2020 is utopia. So meaning, balance. And I don't know if we're there just yet, but certainly it was the awakening. The two is the divine feminine, the zero is unlimited potential. So there was
Ah,
double of that. So
wow.
this was an
Okay.
opportunity, and a lot of people left, and their contract was finished. So there's been a
Mm-hmm.
huge amount of that, and I really believe that's part of a bigger plan.
Yeah, me
It's not
too.
just coincidence
Yeah.
in whatever context one wants to see that. But
Mm-hmm.
equally, those of us who are still here, we still have a part to play in creating the next phase. So I believe the next big turnabout of awakening will be 2026, because
Okay.
that's a brand new 9 year cycle. And then the next one after that will be 2032.
Yes, we
So,
hear about that often. I haven't heard of the 2026 as much, even though I feel we're moving towards in the next couple of years, there's more clean up or clear up or whatever you want to call it.
yeah. Well,
But
the old systems,
2026,
yeah,
okay.
the old systems are falling down, and they're literally falling down
Yes.
around them. But they're now being built from grassroots up, so not from top structure down. It's the other way, and not just buildings, obviously, it's the
Yes.
collective energy. So 2026 will be a big marker for a lot of us to really go into the next level of awareness.
Great.
So,
Okay.
but right now we have to heal the past within
Okay.
ourselves. So a lot of
Yes.
my work involves ancestral healing as well. A lot of it.
Does it? Do you do a lot of that work with
Yeah.
people?
With
Do you do the
numbers,
family
yeah.
constellations or it's just you do it in your way? It's not specifically,
I'll do it my way, in the words of
well,
Frank
that's the way to
Sinatra.
do it.
At
I
the end of the year.
Yeah, an anthem that comes to mind. I sang it. Well, I don't sing, but on a message to a friend yesterday, we were talking about just becoming more of ourselves, and all that kept coming to me. I saw this years ago in a show in Dublin in the afternoon, a drag queen singing, "I am what I am." You know that
Oh,
song? It's Shirley
I do, of
Bassey.
course.
And I just said,
Yeah.
gosh, it feels like an anthem for our times to really, for
And
each
for us
of
wild
us.
women, I even have the hair.
Wild women,
So
yeah, I
yeah.
know. With the beautiful mane of hair. But isn't
Oh yeah.
that part of the what was I going to say? When you talk about the healing and the clearing now. So is that a lot of what you're saying, the work that you're doing, that's what I get a sense of for us to be ready. I know for me to be, let's say ready, but whatever, to be more in my work and more in myself, I have to I feel it's like a purification. I'm constantly detoxifying nearly because we have become, you know, um, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, we've built up a lot of that, which you said in your, so a lot of the work is, if you clear that out, you're more your true frequency, because your true
Yeah.
frequency
Yeah.
becomes nearly not poisoned, but it's just life. It's being a human being. I'm not saying there's anything bad. It's just a part of being a human being.
And a human doing.
A human doing,
And
yeah.
but yeah, I very much agree. And I suppose a part of me, as I'm a Virgo sun, I'm very practical, and well, most things, but I just feel sometimes we can get so caught up. This is where the ego can sneak in and tell us that we have to be sitting in the lotus position like for 10 hours in order to achieve enlightenment. No, no.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with being in the lotus position, of course. It's more just living it. And for me, it's being true to yourself, and as you said, the characters that come into your life, the experiences that present themselves, sometimes the heartache, but the heart makeup and the love, relationships, how we relate. And to keep it simple, keep it simple, seeker. I remember learning
Like
that
that.
years ago. Yeah. So it's just to enjoy this experience. It doesn't mean it's always easy, and it's not. And that's why to remember we are co-creators. We are co-creating everything, and we know this. So we all know it, but just your listeners obviously would, and
Yeah.
viewers. So it's just to recognize that, take that power back, I feel, and share the love. It is, I know, good old Shakespeare, whether he said it or not, but to thine own self be true. And when you really know who you are, and that's why people come to me, they don't know what they're here to do, and they may come to me about its career choices or
Yeah.
relationships. It's not, it's about what am I doing with my life,
Yeah.
and I can help them to understand what you actually signed up for.
Wow. Well,
So
that doesn't sound more important work than knowing,
yeah,
that. And sometimes we go around, well, I have, and maybe that's part of it, around in circles and circles, but you're always being, I love what you said. And yes, for anyone listening, it all sounds, when you start off and on this path or whatever, you're exploring and curious and you're trying to find answers because you're struggling and you're in pain and you're reading and you're watching and you're listening. And it's like, to me, as you said, co-creators. And I was like, sounds great, but what is it? But yeah, I'm more and more, when we start to realize that, isn't it? How That's why I talk about the frequency. And I don't mean to make it sound really abstract or complicated. It's just in my own life, I've noticed the more that I can sort of clear myself of things that, whether it's resentments towards someone, and that's usually because I'm carrying something from the past I refused or haven't dealt with. So that's sort of keeping me out of my power. I suppose it's back to that, isn't it? Or I'm believing something that someone told me that isn't true. So
yeah.
that sort of co-create, just maybe talk a little bit about it, that again, for people listening, going into that a bit more specifically when you talk about
Yeah, it's a brilliant
co-creation.
question. So, like, to co-create, it means that, I remember I stopped listening to the news and reading newspapers years ago. Um, and I remember doing it consciously, and I was saying to myself, no, this doesn't make me feel good. Now, I remember my mother, bless her, from Connemara, used to say to me, you should be listening to the news. You should know what's going on, right? And I
That's
said,
a real Irish thing. You should
oh
know
yeah,
what's
you
going
should know the bad news now. And I remember saying to her, well, believe me, Mom, I will find it out. And I always do, right? So if I need to. Now, so co-creation. So to be co-creator is to recognize the energy you're giving to something is what you're going to create more of. And so surrounding yourself with people, situations, events, music, the arts, whatever it is, you're in sport. I mean, watching the rugby the other night, had no voice, screaming at the television for Ireland against South Africa. It was brilliant. So that raises our vibration. So ultimately, you're creating something even more alive and vibrant. And that's co-creation at its best. And
on.
recognizing that we are energy, we're just balls of energy. And we can't be created or destroyed, really. But ultimately, we are in a position of what we're sending out. It always comes back through people, situations, events, and even on the world stage, as I said earlier, to be mindful of that, because we're seeing our world through our own eyes, whether we're surrounded by newspapers or TV or whatever it is, mainstream media, even social media. Just be mindful of what you're watching, because it's creating. You're creating constantly, so you'll bring more of that in. That's just my
Yes.
understanding, anyway.
No, I love that, because often the conversation can be more about, you don't be doing this and don't be doing that, rather than just saying, just find the joy, something that just lean into whatever gives you joy, and then the rest will sort of take care of itself, rather than going, I need to stop listening to, yes, fair enough, you trust what that doesn't bring you joy, don't do it. If it doesn't feel good to be listening to the news, don't do it. I've stopped too 5 or 6 years ago, and I mean, if you want to listen, there's no prescription. You'll know yourself, isn't it? Like you said, I didn't watch the rugby match, but it's not that I wouldn't enjoy it, but it's not necessarily my thing. But yeah, like whatever. And I need to remember to do that. I have to say, I often have, I need to be doing the work in myself. But I love what you say. It's, finding the joy in your life, and it'll all take care, life takes care of life, doesn't it?
Yeah. I feel that's just my kind of way of doing things. I feel sometimes in the spiritual community we can all get very serious, and there's nothing wrong with being serious. I can be serious, of course I can, but sometimes it's simpler. Just keep it simple, because by doing something you enjoy, and that could be making crafts or baking or photography or walking your dog, doesn't have to be you're out there in the world stage, whatever, doing what you're doing. But you can do that too.
Yeah.
So, and when we do that, when we find that inner compass, our north star, that's when you're going in the right direction. Now, of course, we'll go off little things. We'll have a heartbreak or makeups, breakups, breakdowns, breakthroughs, all of those things. But ultimately, it's to try and find another direction from that. There's always a destination, and it's back to self.
So it's always going back. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that, your North Star. I know someone else who says that. I just think it's a beautiful, it's just a beautiful image nearly that comes to mind, doesn't it? Because
Do
it's
you know
real
yourself?
twinkly and bright and
You're looking up, and like, you live in a beautiful part of the world. Oh my
mm,
God.
mm.
And so do I. And like for me, nature, that's simple.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was gonna
Just go
say
into
that.
your garden,
Yeah, yeah.
And yes, it's lovely to retreat, and I love retreating, and I skulk off, and I go off in different places, and I do all the meditation and chanting and all the things I do. But I also can sit and have a glass of wine and watch Pride and Prejudice, and I
Lovely.
can just be
Yeah, exactly. I love it. Love it.
Mr. Darcy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, my little things in life. But it's the simple things in life. It's just that we
Yeah.
get in the way. And I've learned this the hard way, Celine. I'm talking from life experience.
Oh, I'm pretty much
So,
an expert at complicating things too.
my, I have a
Major.
master's in it.
And
Lord.
can you just we'll well, we don't have to wrap up just soon, but we'll wrap up in the next few minutes. Because I could keep talking to you, but it's lovely. I know when people listen as well, it's nice to I think you've shared so much that just for people to absorb. It's just wonderful. It's wonderful for me. I just feel so grateful to be able to talk to women like you. I mean, this, can you just as well, when you were talking about the sort of awakening or what the shifts on the planet, and we keep hearing about the divine feminine, rising, or this time we are at on the planet. And I suppose the way I understand it, firstly, is because I've been saying it to people, this is what led me to this podcast, something happening in me physically. Like it's not a theoretical, this has been physically happening to me, where I feel this energy rising in me. And I've shared this before, in a drumming circle, and it's like brought it to life even more. But also, we also hear about, and I think I knew this instinctively, even in my work before this, sort of living in a very patriarchal world for I don't know how many thousands of years, and women, and I was in this boat, doing my best in I don't say a man's world, I don't even like that, but trying to live out of that masculine energy, let's say do. And I burnt out as a result, and I ended up with cancer, and and that had to be the case. I'm very grateful. I wouldn't change 1 second of it. So how do you, when people, because I think how do you relate to that, the divine feminine, or what would you have to say about that?
Yeah. And it's interesting, since the year 2000, um, we went into the two was always the divine feminine. So all of us born in the 20th century from 1900 to 1999. We all have the 19 something, in our date of birth. So that's very much the divine masculine. And the 19 is another karmic number, meaning what we've already shared in that what you put into the pot is what you get back out. That's really very, very generalized there, but also about reinvention. But the divine feminine to me is the intuitiveness. It's the receiving. The masculine is the giving and then the receiving. And it's for us, from the young people born from 2000, they're completely different to all of us born in the 19 something. They have no karma. They haven't got the karma we carried.
Wow. Okay.
So my two eldest daughters are born in 94 and 97 respectively, and they're completely different to Vanessa 2001. So and it's just because of the karmic debt that we all carry. So so in terms of divine feminine, to me it's about tapping into the ability to create, the feminine, the creation piece. And the two is being able to see both points of view with compassion. That's the feminine. Now, I'm not saying I'm not talking about men and women here.
I
We're
know,
talking
I
about
know. Yeah. We all have that.
Your audience. So yeah, so the period we're in right now, like 2022, was very curious because it was 2022. It was 3 twos. So that was a real moment of women coming into their power, of the feminine rising, of people recognizing the power of creation. Like it was instant.
Yes. Yeah.
Instant manifestation now. Like
yeah.
we're moving into another, I know it sounds like Star Trek, but we are
moving. It feels like it sometimes, doesn't it? It's like, what?
I mean, I don't know about you. I think of something and boom, it's there in front of me.
Or you say something and you go, oh, I remember saying, be very careful. What do they say? Be careful what you wish for. It's like, boom, here.
Yeah. So the feminine rising. And I really feel it's about that receiving piece. And for all of us to tap into that part of ourselves, which is really high awareness. It's the divinity of true essence of receiving.
Beautiful. Love that. It does. And the intuition, that's a big one for me as well, even being able to hear that voice, which I couldn't for years. Well, I think like you, when I was very young, I felt a lot of things and then shut down. I suppose that's what a lot of us do to survive without even knowing we're doing it. And then it starts, the way I have often described it to people is really, there was 2 years of where I felt like I was shut down through cancer, and that allowed my intuition to come online because I couldn't think. I literally couldn't. Between treatment, or my mind just shut down, and I was like, what's this? There's something else going on here. And a nice voice, and it was very quiet. I think for anyone who might say as well, like, how do you recognize it? One thing for me is I know it's not a voice that's giving out and shouting at me. It's a lovely, gentle, isn't it? It's a lovely, soft, gentle nudge. It'll never force you. It'll never push you. It's just, but you have to sort of get into the quiet a little bit in yourself, don't you? Or even get what I found is the nervous system. If your body is sort of very agitated, which I understand for many it is, if we're going through turbulent times, whatever we can do to calm the nervous system. Any thoughts on that as well? Because I think that does help. And nature, which we mentioned, nature has been my number one, particularly if you find, financially you don't have the resources to get out for a walk, put your feet on the ground. Isn't that sort of the things we can do?
Yeah, back to the simplicity of life and just not making things too complicated. Yes, and some people, some people are clairaudient, they hear things, some people have a note feeling in their stomach. Or a clairvoyant, they can see or feel, as well. It could be a combination of all the above. So clair means clear thinking or clear hearing or clear seeing. But ultimately, when we know ourselves, we have that better understanding of you're very right that it's not an inner critic. We have the inner critic, they're always there on shoulders, they're looking out for, look what you did there now, but that's just, could be a voice from your past. It can just be your own, hard, your ego trying to keep you safe. Because I don't believe ego is always bad. I just think it's trying to keep you stuck. Don't
we
give
need
me
it
too
sort
many
of
chains now.
Yeah. It would, it'd be very hard to survive without it, wouldn't it?
Indeed it would.
In this world, you'd be chewed up.
You surely would. Yeah. So yeah, and it is. I mean, that voice within is a gentle, um, it's a loving, voice. And again, even if you don't hear it, just follow the signs. You'll be guided. It could be through
Yes.
music. It could be through a
Lovely.
painting.
Lovely.
I did a podcast recently there on your personal myth. So looking at a painting and really
Yes.
absorbing that and seeing what triggers for you.
I listened to that. That was just fantastic. And I think I said that to you. I was on my way to an art exhibition, or not, yeah, of a friend. And I just happened to listen to it in the car. And it changed everything when I looked at it, the paintings through that, because she works, a beautiful artist, Jo Gini, who I'll mention, and she builds in layers and layers and layers, and she'll move between all her art, she says, and just it's very, yeah, it's in sort of instinctive what comes up, and it's always, she said, she knows she's finished when there's a harmony in it, and I just loved that. That just she just instinctively knows, and you sense it when you look at her paintings. Well, I did anyways, because I felt very, can take a breath, something without knowing what it was. So the layers for me have been more about taking the layers off, I feel often, isn't it, to reveal that lovely, beautiful part of ourselves, our soul, or isn't it our
And we
essence?
all have a story. And so we can create the story, continue creating, or we can decide to change it. So we're
Mm,
constantly in that story making. And
mm,
when we do make our transition, from what I understand, when we leave this physical body, we will review our story. And we sometimes can look back, as even as I'm speaking with you, talking about my past, that feels like I was a completely different person, but it's not. It's still
mm,
me. I'm
mm,
still the child within. I'm still the teenager. I'm still the adult somewhere.
mm.
But ultimately, I'm the wise woman now as well, the wise, wild woman, and
Yes,
that's what I definitely am. But it's through life experience. It's through a correlation of all the different people we are, and we become as we transcend through this journey. So
beautiful.
the best thing is to try and enjoy it.
Enjoy
That's
it.
really
Yeah,
summing it
yeah.
all up, I
Enjoy
think.
the ride, isn't it? It's a ride of,
Enjoy it and
and
hold on to your
hold
britches.
on. Yeah, life is a roller coaster for sure.
It surely is.
Yeah. And when you remember you created, I think that's the thing. Go, wow, I was pretty brave. That's sometimes what comes to me now, going, God, I was brave. We're warriors. And the wild I love from the wild woman, I talked about that in the book Women Who Run with the Wolves, because I love, yes, the divine feminine, the receptive, the intuitive, the soft, but there's also, isn't there, there's what I found the other side of that sort of instinctive nature, untamed, which is nature, and we are that. So isn't that the other, I feel that's the other side
Oh,
of
yeah.
sometimes the feminine. We don't, like what you said, they're getting out and singing in your art and your own wildness, and the
Not
the,
a
the
problem.
witch or whatever. What's
Yeah,
the word we would
yeah.
have used?
Yeah, again, it's allowing oneself. And I think our generation, we're lucky, the women that we are now, because, God Lord, so many. I was watching a program last night about women in Ireland in the 1950s and 60s, and just the repression. Oh my God, it was actually hilarious. You know, the lovely legs competition. And there was a thing of talking about having to look well to find a future husband. I mean,
Oh
I was
God.
roaring laughing. It was so funny though. But that was very much, you basically were just there too. And then you had to give up your job, obviously, the marriage laws and so forth.
Yeah.
So we've come a long way. So we've every right to be wild, wise women, and
Yes.
to just be part of this collective experience.
Beautiful. That sounds like a good place that we'll even, when you say, sorry, just the ancestral, I think now of, we're doing it as well, not just for ourselves, but the women that we came from, aren't we? We're a line. So it's I sort of feel that, isn't it? Where it's the energy of the feminine as opposed to just
Yes, I
we're
I
carrying all
agree.
of that.
We are, and this month 16/7 and the year is about healing the past.
Okay.
So for all of us, we have a part to play. We can't change the story, but we can heal what's been played out still. And I certainly, I believe, we are a combination of, millions, thousands and millions of people when you think of it like. you know, and even the soil, the bones, everything is in the earth that we live in. We're only like ants on the earth anyway, as an ANTS. So, you know, we're just borrowed time here. So respect it and respect everyone as best you can. And just love on the deepest level you can love. Start with number one, which is you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Gráinne. I won't take up more of your time, but just before we finish up, maybe you might just mention where people can contact
Sure.
you, find out more about your work, or anything
Yes.
else maybe you want to mention on your podcast as well, which is fantastic. I highly recommend. Just it's like a soothing balm for the soul. I listen to when I'm out walking. Yeah, it's just beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, so I have my podcast is Numbers for Success on Spotify and all major platforms. And that's free. And I want to keep it as free as I can. So people want to become patrons or want to become a part of my community where you receive a daily message. That's something else. They can contact me through my website, which is numbersforsuccess.com. And sure, I'm on everything. I'm on Instagram, not so much Facebook, but Instagram is one of my major vehicles. And
Perfect.
so people can contact me there for appointments.
Lovely. And I'll include the links for anyone who might be watching on YouTube. I'll include the links in the description box. And also it'll be available to listen on Spotify. So thank you so much, Gráinne. I appreciate your time, your wisdom,
Great.
your energy. Everything has just been gorgeous to speak to another wild woman
Another
and
wild
share the
woman. Let's
space
keep
with
going.
you.
Much love. Thank you.
Much love. Thank you.